I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to Fear Unzipped. And you
Thank
know that you are an important part of why this podcast even came to be, or maybe you don't know, but we can talk about that later. But I wanted to really dive into you. This is a podcast about why are we fearful? Why do we stress? Why are we anxious? Certainly, I have experienced all of those things and continue to experience some of those things. And I'd like to just hear your experiences because you have such an incredible background. You are, I mean, I could take the whole podcast and just list your credentials. So we won't do that. But you are a holistic intuitive therapist.
Yes,
You are a past life practitioner. You're a
correct.
psychic medium.
Yep.
You also consult, I think, at the School of Psychic School in
Yeah,
London,
with College
which
of
is a
Psychic Studies. Yeah. Yep.
very, very renowned school.
Yeah.
You've had near-death experiences.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you really are the full meal deal, I think, as we would say in the States. So, can we just jump right in with you? And can you tell us what your life was like before you got into all these different modalities and then how it happened?
Lovely. Thank you. Absolutely a pleasure to be here. It's so important. I know when we spoke about this before, but yeah, I think it's so important, and people really need to know this right now. What was life like originally?
Yeah.
Um, so let's look at it. If I go back, a shorter version, I think, my mum was married 3 times, and a lot of her relationships that she tried her best, bless her, and she did. And I'm a mother, so I know what it's like. But she tried her best, and she was married 3 times. And each of those fathers, yeah, should we say there is quite dysfunctional, the family I was brought up in. So going back, it was a child feeling very fearful. We had no money. We went from having loads of money and eating and everything else. And you take that for granted when you've got money, and then going really onto the breadline. And we really had nothing at all. And being a child that would, going to bed, we would literally put spare mats or carpets over our blankets, and then coats as well on top of them, and fully clothed, because we had no central heating. It was cold time, it was scary. So, having all that growing up, and then again, she remarried, we had lots of money, surplus of cash, and you took it for granted. And again, she got divorced, and there was a lot of violence in the relationship. We were aware that one of my dads was an alcoholic, and he would beat her up, and he would actually then beat me up. So it was quite a violent background. Yeah, so there was a lot going on. So when I met my partner, who was very from a different background, I didn't know much about him, and I entered into a loving relationship initially, and then it just became quite toxic. And I had my own children. I wouldn't say it was him individually, because I have to take responsibility of entering into that relationship too. But if you come from a certain background, you only expect certain things, and then as you grow and you expand, as I became a counselor, I started to see actually it was a bit dysfunctional, it was a bit toxic, and then I left recently.
When the van hit you, what happened to you?
Okay, so it was the day when I left the office, and I was thinking about going to pick the children up from, school. I'd left the children in the morning. I was in a hurry, didn't kiss them goodbye or anything. And looking back at it now, it still affects me today, even though, they're now 28 and 30 years old, they're adults, and we talk about it. And, but there's always a part of us that, we processing things. And literally before I got to the crossing, the pedestrian crossing, I think there was 4 or 5 other individuals by me, pressed the button to make it stop all the traffic. And I could hear a voice, and it was sounding like my nan's voice. My nan had passed away when I was very young, but I always sort of thought, well, she's always around me, but I couldn't explain. And then, the other people that were crossing, they had crossed, and I was unaware of that at the time. Um, and then I had a voice saying everything's going to be okay. And I couldn't understand why I had that voice. So I looked around me, just to check on traffic. and I already started feeling a bit warm, and I couldn't understand what was going on because it was, March. It was cold in London. I was, heavy coat and everything. Um, and I never felt the van hitting me. I was in my head, as we all are, and I was thinking, I need to go and get the newspaper. I need to post this letter before I get on the train to see the children. And I was told, I had this voice, and it was my nan's voice, which I couldn't make sense of at the time. And I heard her voice sort of say, no, go and get the newspaper, which meant I changed direction. And when I changed direction, it changed everything. By changing direction, the van hit me on my left-hand side, and I sort of flew across the ground, hit the ground. If I'd gone straight across to post the letter, the police later said that your head, your neck would have been severed. You would have gone
Mm.
through the front screen. Um, but I didn't feel any of this at all. And I was, I'd hit the ground, and I didn't know that. But all I know is I felt very warm. There was a bright light around me, and I felt very safe. Um, Somebody had told my partner who worked nearby, he had come walking down, sort of power walking down the road to see what was going on. Now, I could see this, but not from my physical body that was actually dead. I was told I had my heart had stopped for about 7 minutes. So I could see this individual walking down the road. I knew him, but didn't know why he was so stressed and why he was walking down the road so fast. So I had no emotional, sensational feeling from where I was. When I was looking down at everything that was going on, there was crowds of people. I could hear an ambulance come in. I could hear a paramedic on his motorbike, the sirens. I could hear all that, and I sensed the crowd, how they were feeling. They were panicking. I heard someone shout and say, "Let me get a towel for her, put it under her head." I later found out that was the hairdresser. Um, there was lots of people looking on, spectators, but I was not physically there. Even though my physical body was there, I couldn't feel that. And where I was, it just felt very bright white light, and I felt at home, and I felt safe. A part of me had then popped off into a lorry. The driver there was moaning and saying he got stuck in traffic. Some woman has stepped out in front of a van, and I could hear him. And I remember thinking, I feel a bit puzzled because how comes I'm hearing his conversation? I'm in his cabin of this lorry, and then I didn't understand. I was like moving around, and I just didn't understand. And I remember that it was only when my partner had placed his hand on my physical body that I didn't see it initially, but I felt his feelings, and I heard his voice like telepathically going, "What am I going to do? How am I going to look after Rebecca and Nathan?" Um, and I remember sensing it, and I was somewhere else. And I just remember feeling what it was feeling. And then it hit me that, oh my God, that's me. And then there was part of me that rushed back to the body, but I hadn't entered into the body, but I'd rushed back, but I could feel it. So the senses, all our senses were going crazy. And then where I was, in this white light, this area, I remember I didn't know what it was called at that time. I just remembered feeling that there were lots of books, there was information, there was like digital, virtual information. There was lots of information being held about everyone in the universe.
Is there anything else that happened? I know you had that near death experience. Then wasn't there another one that
Yeah.
happened?
After the near death experience, the first one, the road traffic accident, I was unable to walk for 4 years, unaided. I was in a wheelchair for 2 years, a further 2 years with a walking stick. And I was told I'd never walk again. They would amputate my foot, my leg. And it was literally, reading up about Dr. Joe Dispenza, watching his information, that made me learn that actually because of his injury, that, with spinal injury, I had to do it for myself. So I literally worked with my brain, thinking of rewiring and looking at how it was to walk again. So, there's a lot of science behind this. Whereas if you go into the mind and it's like muscle memory, that imagining myself walking again, that I actually was firing off the information to my muscles and the nerve endings and everything else. It was helping my body to heal. We have that ability. And
Mhm.
we have that taken away from us because we think that we should just relying on medical side of things, doctors and everything else. Now, I've worked in a hospital, so I'm not saying, that we shouldn't rely on them as well, but we have to also be able to empower ourselves and learn. Actually, our body has everything it needs to heal. And you were saying about our mindset, positive and negative and happy and sad or whatever. So that's really, really important. So, but learning that we can empower ourselves to look at, we can make those changes, and we're never too old. I'm 56 and I'm excited about what's to come, and I'm still going. And that's how it's a better way of handling a situation. Take one day at a time. If you can't handle the whole day, take 1 hour, one half an hour, whatever.